chapters, Chapter 9 and Chapter 10, Emerging Adulthood and Young Adulthood. This is you guys, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about people with beards and people who need to wash her hair. Ugh. The emergence of emerging adulthood. There are five distinctive characteristics of emerging adulthood. Age of identity explorations, explore various possibilities of work and love. Age of instability, exploration leads to instability. Self-focused age, learning to be more self-sufficient before committing. Age of feeling in between, feeling of being in transition. Age of possibilities, potential for dramatic changes. Explore various possibilities of work and love. In the 1960s, the median age of marriage in most developed countries was in the low 20s, 21 for women and 23 for men. And this, of course, is when I got married. And I lowered that average because I was 19 the first time I got married, and my significant other was 18. She was 18. Yeah, 18. She turned 18 in May 5th, and then we got married on May 10th. In the United States, today the average age of marriage is 27. In all other developed countries, the average age of marriage is 30. This delay in marriage is due to four revolutionary changes: technology revolution, the sexual revolution, the women's movement, and the youth movement. As emerging adults explore different possibilities in love and work, the rest of their life tends to be in flux as well. They tend to move from one residence to the other, seeking to find where they belong. They move out of their parents' abode for the first time and taste freedom. A rate of residential change in the past year, as you can see, when people are 18 to 24, 33% of them move. And they don't really get stable until they get into the 50s and 60s. 20-somethings may move to college after graduation and with a romantic partner around a country or the world to study or work. Almost half of American emerging adults move back in with their parents at least once before they find permanent residence. Emerging adulthood is a time when individuals shift from reliance on their parents to their own life. These individuals must focus on themselves to develop the self-reliance to make this traumatic break from their old selves to their new selves. Individuals of this age are developing decision-making skills, knowledge, and self-understanding. Individuals of this age tend to be less egocentric than adolescents, but they are seeking self-sufficiency. Often these emerging adults feel like they are stuck in between, no longer an adolescent, but not yet an adult. Research indicates that these individuals often don't feel like adults until they are in their late 20s. Often they feel like they are approaching adulthood but haven't quite gotten there yet. Research shows that it isn't only emerging adults in the United States that feel that they are in between. In Argentina, Israel, Czech Republic, China, and Austria, they also feel the same way. Emerging adults live in a world of expanding possibilities. Few of their dreams have been tested. Research shows that 89% believe they will fulfill their dreams someday. If there is a problem in their life, such as a negative family life, this is the time when they are on their own and can move beyond their past. In the 1950s, manufacturing in the United States was based on the hard commodities, but since then, manufacturing has changed to that of a service economy. Because of the increased need for knowledge of technology, education has been extended past high school, tertiary education. Most people are delaying marriage thoughts or plans until they are done with their education. Thus, they are delaying marriage into their late 20s. The sexual revolution was sparked by the invention of the birth control pill. And that wasn't until 1964. Because the fear of pregnancy was removed, sexual morality changed, and the sexual revolution was the result. Because intercourse could be engaged without fear of pregnancy, people took longer and longer to decide to marry. Now, most young people have a series of sexual relationships before getting married, and premarital sexual relationships enjoys widespread tolerance. The women's movement morphed out of the civil rights and peace movements of the 1950s through the 1970s. The movement expanded the opportunities for young women, giving them options beyond marriage and homemaking. Colleges that had low percentages of women in the 1950s and 1960s began bursting at the seams, which should be an A, with larger and larger percentages. Seams should be spelled SEAMS, and larger percentages of women. Now almost all occupations are open to women. My sister, when she graduated from high school in 1960, almost everybody in the class said that they wanted to be a mother and a homemaker. All the females in the class wanted to be a homemaker and a mother. And my sister said she wanted to be a lawyer. There were like two people that said they wanted to be something other than a mother and a homemaker. One of the interesting aspects of the 60s and 70s was the revolutionary youth movement that denigrated adulthood and exalted youth. In the 1950s, teenagers were eager to enter adulthood, so early marriage was very common. However, in today's world, adolescents and young adults see marriage and everything that comes with it, children and a home, as something to be avoided. These individuals are trying to delay such serious responsibilities as much as possible. Europe has the longest emerging adulthood time. The average age of marriage and parenthood are around 30. Asians aren't considered adults until they are capable of supporting their parents financially. This may curtail identity exploration seen in European countries. Developing countries tend to be split between urban and rural. Urban young people are more likely to experience emerging adulthood. Rural young people have fewer opportunities for schooling and exploring. Emerging adulthood is a period of peak physical functioning. VO2 peaks in the early 20s. Reaction, grip, strength, and bone density are at its peak. This is a time when the individual is the least susceptible to physical illness. It's questionable. Lifestyle encourages poor nutrition, high stress, and a lack of sleep. College students more than twice as likely to show symptoms of delayed sleep phase syndrome. I forgot the verb. The college students are more than twice as likely to show symptoms of delayed sleep phase syndrome, sleeping longer on the weekends and holidays than through the week. This leads to poor academic and job performance. College students tend to accumulate a sleep debt that they try to recover during any downtime. 2/3 of students report sleep problems. 1/4 report severe sleep disturbances such as insomnia, eveningness versus morningness. Some emerging adults prefer early to bed and early to rise, while others have a more late to bed, late to rise pattern. These patterns tend to change with age due to growth hormones. Emerging adults are encouraged to maintain good sleep hygiene, wake up at the same time each day, get regular exercise, take late afternoon naps, limit caffeine intake, avoid excessive alcohol intake. In the United States, car fatalities are highest between the ages of 16 to 24. In experience, the most dangerous time for a driver is the year after they receive their license. Risky driving behavior, speeding, driving under the influence, follow too closely, not obeying traffic signs and signals, changing lanes erratically, pass at inopportune times, allow too little time to merge, fail to yield for pedestrians. This is especially true of male drivers. Nearly half of U.S. college students admit to having driven intoxicated in the past year. Young drivers are less likely to wear seatbelts. Drivers not wearing seatbelts are twice as likely to die. 3 times more likely to be injured. Socialization impacts number of accidents. The more friends in the car, the more likely the driver will have an accident. Personality characteristics can promote high-risk driving. Sensation seeking and aggressiveness in the driver is not good. Reducing fatalities includes parental involvement and monitoring. Graduated driver licensing is also effective. Complete freedom is not awarded until the individual has a clean record for a number of years. Rates of car fatalities, and there you go. Right after they learn to drive is when they kill themselves. Especially males, not real bright. 21st birthday parties can be painful. Some people take their very first legal drink at 21 and may drink to excess. The day may pass in a haze of alcohol to be followed by a day of hangover. Drinking may not hold the same attraction after this, since legal doesn't have the same titillation as illegal. For most people, adulthood means accepting responsibilities that adults must face: marriage, raising a family, providing for the family through work. This is known as role transition, accepting the duties and responsibilities of an adult. Substance abuse peaks in the early 20s. Peak in decline is possibly explained by unstructured socializing. College-age students have more unstructured time, causing peak drinking. This also may be the first time the individual has had any time to themselves. Role transition causes decline in substance abuse. And there you go. That's when you binge drink. When you're in your early 20s, how stupid. Marijuana use the same way. Drinking alcohol, about 63% of people in the United States drink regularly. Drinking in most industrialized countries has been declining over the past 2 decades because of the expense of alcohol and tougher drinking laws. As long as a person doesn't drink and drive, 2 glasses of wine or 1 beer makes them less likely to have a stroke. Binge drinking is defined as consuming 5 or more drinks in a row. In most cases, drinking that much alcohol in a short period of time will get the individual quite drunk. Several antisocial behaviors are associated with binge drinking, including rape, assault, drunk driving, and domestic abuse. And there you go. That's how attractive it is to be drunk. Oh, there's where you want to be, laying down behind the toilet. Okay. Night out with the gang, rounds of $1.99 shooter specials, $40. Night out with the gang, $30. Self-experiment with the date rape drug Rohypnol, $10. Forgetting that you're pissed drunk, laying spread eagle on the sidewalk in front of the bar, not in bed with your lover, priceless. 1 in 13 adults abuses alcohol or are alcoholic. Alcohol dependence is a combination of several chemicals in the brain that causes the individual to crave alcohol. GABA inhibits impulsiveness. Glutamate excites the nervous system. Norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin, opioid, peptides. Long-term drinking can deplete or increase levels of these chemicals in the brain so that the individual craves the substance. Passing out in the bathroom, probably not the best idea. I don't know how in the world he ever got into that. Yeah. Researchers have determined that as people age, they develop the ability to use better and better judgment, and this is known as post-formal thought. Truth may vary from situation to situation. Solutions must be realistic to be reasonable. Ambiguity and contradiction are the rule rather than the exception. Emotion and subjective factors usually play a role in thinking. Part of post-formal thought is the development of reflective judgment, or the ability to reason through dilemmas dealing with current affairs, religion, science, personal relationships, and other daily factors. Reflective judgment is not automatic and takes decades to develop. The first 3 stages in the reflective judgment model represent pre-reflective thought. In these stages, the individual does not perceive that their perception could possibly be inaccurate. These individuals have a hard time understanding that some problems do not have cut and dried answers. In stages 4 and 5, the individual acknowledges that not all situations have conditions that can be totally known. Solutions must be based on situations and evidence. Knowledge is seen as subjective. As the individual moves into stages 6 and 7, they realize that knowledge is constructed from evidence and argument after careful analysis of the problem or situation. Reflective judgment is only possible through continual reevaluation of beliefs and new evidence. Training beyond secondary school is called tertiary education. Around World War I, less than 10% of the population in any country obtained tertiary education. Until the 1970s, most of the people seeking tertiary education were men. Because of religious beliefs, women were considered cognitively and emotionally inferior to men. Tertiary education has become a normative experience, with women outnumbering men. And there we go. Tertiary school gross enrollment ratio, as you can see, Argentina, this is Colombia, United States, Russia, Eastern Europe. Oh, that's Ukraine and Belarus. That's Spain, Iceland, Australia, New Zealand, Korea. There you go. Countries vary widely in how they structure tertiary education. Japan is relaxed and undemanding in university years. It is 4 years of sanctioned activities to think. After the highly competitive middle school and high school years, this will probably be the only time in their lives when they are encouraged to be leisurely. European colleges have no general education requirements. Traditionally, they study 6+ years in a specific discipline only. Currently, the European colleges are changing to match the U.S. pattern. U.S.-Canada supports the first 2 years of general education for exploration. Many Americans will take 6 years to earn a 4-year degree. Yet only 57% will finish their degree even in 6 years. The major reasons for the delay in finishing their education: changing majors, adding a minor, taking advantage of internships, taking advantage of studying abroad, financial constraints. Tuition has increased by a factor of 4 since 1982. Financial aid has shifted from grants to loans. Societies benefit from having an educated population because it allows for economic growth in a world economy. The individual benefits through higher earnings and occupational status. Verbal and quantitative skills, oral and written communication, distinct identity, social confidence, increased self-concept, and psychological well-being. College bonus showing economic benefits of tertiary education. There you go. More money. For some, the job search is systematic and changing. For others, the job search is more meandering and without focus. After tertiary education, many struggle to find work that pays enough to live on. Without tertiary education, basic skills are needed to obtain employment. 6 basic skills are necessary for new jobs: reading at a 9th grade level or higher, doing math at a 9th grade level or higher, solving semi-structured problems, communicating orally and in writing, using a computer for word processing and other tasks, collaborating in diverse groups. Unemployment rates are twice as high for emerging adults as for adults beyond age 25. Unemployment for young adults and teens is especially high, as they are for minorities. Over half of high school dropouts are unemployed. Manufacturing jobs have diminished. Urban decline also impacted rise in unemployment. Self-esteem increases with emerging adults. Awkwardness of physical appearance declines because their appearance becomes more stable. Peer evaluations from high school are less likely as people get away from the high school social milieu. Family relationships tend to improve. There is a greater degree of control over one's life. Erickson's identity versus identity confusion, cliquishness and intolerance of differences, both hallmarks of the adolescent social scene, are defenses against identity confusion. Individuals need a stable identity before reaching intimacy, and this may explain prolonged cohabitation and less frequent marriages. Identity formation historically has been thought to occur in adolescence. However, emerging adulthood is the time period of importance for identity formation. The key areas to form identity are love, work, and ideology. 3 elements of identity development: assessing abilities and strengths, identifications that have accumulated by modeling, assess opportunities available to them in society. Marcia classified adolescence into one of 4 identity statuses: diffusion, moratorium, foreclosure, and achievement. Culture influences identity. Many cultures view the self as interdependent in relation with others rather than independent. Exploration to establish identity is not possible in some cultures, where choices are limited to by economy and strict traditions. Work may be limited by economy. Marriage and dating may be limited by traditional parents and arranged marriages. Exploration of ideology occurs more in Western countries, whereas the other cultures do not tolerate such independent thought. Globalization impacts development of bicultural identity, their local culture, global and/or hybrid identity, and culture. Identity is more complex if the individual is a member of an ethnic minority group. As adolescents move into adulthood, they become more and more aware about their ethnic identity. Minority adults are forced into a dual identity: their minority status and majority status, African American, French Canadian, Turkish, Dutch. 4 ways of responding to ethnic awareness: assimilation, adopting the ways of the majority culture; marginality, rejecting both your own culture and that of the majority culture; separation, interacting only with your own ethnic group; and biculturalism, developing dual identity. Ideas about gender have become more egalitarian in the United States during the 21st century. However, gender stereotypes still exist, especially with regard to work. Women's work is more likely to be rated less favorable than men's, even by other women. Smith and Snell in 2010 found that among emerging adults, religious beliefs were stronger than behavior. 44% reported that belief was important in their lives. Religious doctrine is not as important as a belief in God. 75% reported believing in God. More tolerant of religious differences, religious beliefs related to higher well-being and lower high-risk behaviors. According to Smith and Snell in 2010, emerging adults tend to have more individualized approach to religion. 4 major categories: agnostic atheists, 40% most are 40% most are complacent, though there are some who are strongly anti-religious. Deists, 15% believe that there is something out there. Liberal believers, 30% liberally accept and ignore what they want from their faith. And conservative believers, about 15%, hold strong traditional beliefs. Now, if you add that up, that's 100%. So as you can see, the agnostic atheists are the largest group. But if you put the liberal believers and the conservative believers together, that's 45%. Well, I guess you can put the deists in there too. Deists believe there's something out there, but they don't know what it is. In the United States, participation in the conventional politics is low. Voting is low. Involvement in political parties is low. Volunteer work and political demonstration is high. High involvement in political extremes. Increases in political extremes impacted by fewer social ties and obligations to other age periods. Increased involvement could also be identity related. And of course, we're talking about emerging adults. In the United States, most children leave home at about 18 to 19 years of age. Common reasons for leaving: college, cohabitation, independence. Increased quality of parental interaction occurs after leaving home. Now contact is voluntary. Ethnic minorities tend to stay at home longer. 40% of all emerging adults will return to the nest at least once. And I didn't return at all. I went to college when I was 17, and I joined the military right out of college, and the military took care of me for the next 30 years. So there you go. I never had to move back with my parents again. A trend that social scientists have been seeing in the last couple of decades is the young adult who graduates from college and moves back in with their parents before resolving Erikson's intimacy versus isolation dilemma. These individuals are referred to as thresholders, or incompletely launched young adults. There are 4 patterns for young adults leaving home. In-time leavers left before turning 25, about 55%. The average male moves out at age 23. The average female moves out at 21. Still in the nesters are people who are actively trying to move out and will be out by 25, and that is about 14%. Late leavers are still living at home at 25, that's about 20%. And returners are children that develop an independent life and then return to their birth home, and that's about 11%. European emerging adults stay at home longer than in the United States. European emerging adults value mutual support of their family. It affords them a higher standard of living, staying at home. Parental understanding increases in emerging adults. Intimacy grows in importance as people pass from adolescence to adulthood. Emerging adults have fewer friends, but those they do have, there is more self-disclosure, though fewer shared activities. There is increased time in unstructured activities. There is a decline in leisure activities as people age. Once upon not very long ago, it was taboo to talk about sex. Sex was so feared that when Lucy was pregnant with little Ricky, the word pregnant could not be used. In the early sitcoms, when they showed the bedroom of the parents, they slept in twin beds, not a double bed. Even Rob and Laura Petrie didn't sleep in the same bed. Sex is more accepted in today's society. In today's society, premarital sex is expected, non-marital sex is common, and casual sex is touted as perfectly acceptable behavior. The old double standard, where males were allowed more sexual freedom than females, is now passé. Research has shown that sexual mores in the United States have changed a great deal. One study showed that of individuals born before 1910, 61% of men, but only 12% of women had had premarital sex. That was in 1910. By the 1980s, the ratio was almost even for males and females, but as the hippie generation ages, sexual attitudes of the older generation seems to be liberalizing. Sexual orientation, there are 4 basic forms of sexual orientation. Heterosexual, of course, attracted to members of the opposite sex. Homosexual, attracted to members of the same sex. Bisexual, attracted to members of both sexes. And a new one is asexuality, not especially attracted to anyone. And that's just recently been recognized. No one talked about it, has ever talked about it until it was in a book by Kurt Vonnegut. What did he call them? He called them newts, as in neutrals. And then since then, of course, people have recognized the fact that these individuals are out there, individuals that don't really care about sex one way or the other. Sexual orientation represents feelings and self-concept. They may or may not be expressed in behavior. While homosexuality has been around since the dawn of man, it was considered a mental illness until the DSM-3 50 years ago. Yet homosexuality has been acceptable in more countries than it has been rejected. And in one ancient Western society, ancient Greece, it was the accepted norm. Incidence of homosexuality seems to be about the same in all cultures. In the United States, about 2.8% of males and 1.4% of females identify themselves as homosexual. Homosexual encounters do not make someone gay. 5% of males and 4% of females report adult homosexual encounters in their lifetime. People in large cities report more homosexual encounters for males, about 9%, but only 3% for females. Sexual orientation emerges for most people in early adolescence without any prior sexual experience. For this reason, psychologists do not consider sexual orientation a conscious choice that can be changed. Biology may play an important role in sexual orientation. Research shows looking at homosexuality and sibling connections, the closer the genetic connection, the more likely a similar orientation. Some research indicates that male homosexuality may run in families. One of the residual benefits of the sexual revolution has been the acceptance of being single. 60% of women and 80% of men between 20 and 24 are not married. 5% of women and 4% of men never marry in their lifetimes. Reasons include freedom in movement and sexuality, fear of divorce, joy in being alone. Internet use is higher among emerging adults than any other group. Emerging adults spend an average of 3.5 hours a day on the internet. Used for college work, a study in the UK found that the number of hours online negatively correlated with grades. Social networking, presentation issues can become controversial. Identity play can be common. Pornography, number one in use of the internet is pornography. In a study of college students, 87% of males and 31% of females reported viewing internet pornography. Mobile phones, social networking and communicating with friends, text messaging, increasing use of staying in contact with family and friends. And that is the end of that chapter. Let's go ahead and jump into chapter 10, Young Adulthood. It's raining, it's raining. What it means to become an adult: accepting responsibility for oneself, making independent decisions, becoming financially independent. Cultural variations include Israelis must complete 2 years of military service. Koreans and Chinese shift from being supported by their parents to supporting their parents financially. And traditional cultures focuses on marriage. In India, the top criteria for adulthood has to do with emotional self-control. Changes in aging: graying hair begins in young adulthood at about 30 years of age. Thinning hair, skin becomes looser and wrinkles appear. Cholesterol and fat begin to accumulate as metabolism decreases with age. Immune system ages, reduction of T cells and B cells, making the individual more susceptible to diseases. And there you go. The hair, the skin, the thymus decreases in T cells, the lungs decreases in vital capacity, your heart decreases in maximum heart rate, accumulates cholesterol and fat, bone marrow decreases B cells, muscle mass decreases. My goodness gracious. Let's stay young. Most people will gain weight throughout their adulthood, though usually slowly. Weight gain may be caused by multiple factors: a continuously declining in the basal metabolic rate, genetics, biology, diet. Adult with BMI over 25 is considered to be overweight. If it's over 30, it's obese. The countries with the highest rates of obesity are the wealthiest countries. In developing countries, obesity rates are climbing. This may be because there has been an increase in Western-type diet as the countries gain position in the world. Developed countries have higher obesity rates in lower socioeconomic status groups because of the quality of the food that they eat. Obesity in developed countries is impacted by diet and sedentary work. Adult obesity rates worldwide. There you go. We're the fattest country in the world. Oh my goodness gracious. Obesity risks and outcomes: high blood pressure, diabetes, sleep disorders, digestive problems, teasing, ridicule, discrimination, difficulty finding a romantic partner, and depression. Lack of exercise may be caused by busy pace of modern life. As you can see, that's what we're dealing with here. Children get more exercise than adolescents, and the level of exercise just continues to decline over the years. Effects of exercise, especially aerobic exercise, healthy weight, increased metabolic rate, reduced risk of diseases and illness, lower levels of anxiety. Aerobic exercise is exercise that raises your heart rate but does not put you in oxygen debt. That includes running, swimming, aerobic dancing, soccer, and basketball. When adults exercise regularly, they reduce the risks of a variety of illnesses and diseases, including diabetes, cardiovascular disease, several types of cancers. Death rates increase among those who get exercise as compared to those who don't. There are also mental health benefits from exercise. Exercise generates endorphins and norepinephrine in the brain, which not only provide pain relief, but increase pleasurable feelings and feelings of well-being. People who exercise regularly have lower rates of anxiety and depression. Children who have high IQs are more likely to succeed as adults. IQ scores and future success are moderately correlated. Lowest scores had work-related problems. Highest scores did well in careers. Higher scores, 140 plus, had fewer personal problems and greater occupation success. Intelligence has been on the minds of educators since the beginning of the 20th century. In France, Binet and Simon came up with a test to measure intelligence in France in 1905 to free the French education system of individuals who were not intelligent enough to succeed. And this is Binet, and this is Simon, if I'm not mistaken. Binet brought the test to the United States in 1913, and it eventually was revised for the U.S. at Stanford University in California to become the Stanford-Binet IQ test. An attempt to gauge intelligence during World War I was an abysmal failure, and IQ has been struggling to find acceptance ever since. Sternberg's triarchic theory of intelligence includes the following three components: analytical intelligence, traditional idea of intelligence; creative intelligence, taking information and applying it in new ways; practical intelligence, applying information to solve problems in everyday life. Sternberg's practical intelligence may be more inclusive cross-culturally, having the ability and knowledge to adapt your abilities in a culturally appropriate manner. Cultures vary in what constitutes intelligence. In China, intelligence includes humility, self-knowledge, freedom from conventional standards or judgment. In Zambia, intelligence concepts emphasize cooperativeness and obedience. Intelligence in Kenyan adults includes responsible participation in family and social life. In Zimbabwe, the word for intelligence, ngware, literally means prudent and cautious, especially in social situations. The adult brain becomes fully developed by the middle 20s. Two aspects of cognitive development in young adulthood: expertise, extensive knowledge and skill in a specific field. Exposure to a specific field allows problems to be addressed efficiently. Frontal lobe maturity promotes expertise. Creativity, putting new ideas together in creative ways. With expertise, the individual is able to go from problem solving to problem finding. Some rigidity can develop with age, causing creativity to peak in young adulthood. Intimacy versus isolation is a central conflict starting in adolescence, drifting into adulthood. Often this social crisis takes place at the same time as the identity development crisis. Erickson and other researchers have observed that until the individual goes through identity development, they rarely get involved in a romantic relationship. However, Arseth has noted that often identity and intimacy develop at the same time, mutually reinforcing each other. Research shows that there are gender differences in development. Intimacy issues tend to arise in females before males. Intimacy often arises before identity for females. Robert Sternberg proposed different types of love based on three specific qualities: passion, physical attraction and sexual desire; intimacy, closeness and emotional attachment; commitment, pledged to love over the long run. The three can be combined to form 7 types of love. And there they are. Liking, intimacy alone without passion or commitment. Most friendships fit into this category. Liking. Infatuation, passion alone without intimacy or commitment. It involves a great deal of physiological and emotional arousal, a heightened level of sexual desire, no emotional closeness, no enduring commitment. Empty love, commitment alone, no passion, no intimacy. A couple who have been married for many years have lost the passion and intimacy in their relationship. In countries where there are arranged marriages, the early stages of the marriage may tend to be empty. Romantic love. There is passion, there is intimacy, but there is no commitment. It is joyful, it is intense, it rarely lasts for very long. Companionate love. There is intimacy, there is commitment, there is no passion. This type of love occurs with long-term couples. The passion has decreased, but they still feel intimate toward one another. They certainly are committed to one another. Fatuous love. There is passion, there is commitment, there is no intimacy. Whirlwind courtships fit this criteria. People meet, fall passionately in love, and then get married before they have a chance to really know each other. Romeo and Juliet fit this type of love. Fatuous, meaning foolish. Consummate love. Passion is there, intimacy is there, commitment is there, the ideal love for many people. And of course, this is The Princess Bride. That's actually the cover of the original Princess Bride, the book. And I've read it. Interesting book. Changes in love over the course of a relationship. Marriage may exist for several reasons: uniting people to serve complementary gender roles, reduces sexual competition, necessary for the species, variation between cultures and choice of marriage partners, economics and number of marriage partners. The importance of various traits in mate selection throughout the world. Men's ranking: number 1, mutual attraction, love; dependable character, emotional stability and maturity; pleasing disposition, good health; education and intelligence; sociability is number 7; desire for home and children is way down at number 8; 9, refinement, neatness; and 10 is good looks, way down at the bottom. For women, mutual attraction and love is number 1, just like men. Dependable character, number 2, just like men. Emotional stability and maturity, the same as a man. Pleasing disposition, there you go. Now we get a little bit, now we vary a little bit. Number 5 for women is education and intelligence. Number 6 is sociability. Number 7 is good health. Number 8 is desire for home and children, which is the same as men. Ambition and industriousness is number 9. And refinement and neatness. Romantic love may not be a basis for marriage for all cultures. Arranged marriages are an alliance between families with love developing after marriage. Commitment first and attachment second. Many traditional cultures are shifting from arranged to semi-arranged. Marriage includes economic transitions in many cultures. Bride price, substantial gift or money, or property from groom and kin to bride and her kin. Bride service, groom is obligated to work for the bride's family for a time. And dowry, transfer of money or property for the bride's family to the groom. Western view of marriage, strongly based on intimacy and sexual relationships. The focuses on ideal mate could lead to marital dissatisfaction. Factors that predict marital satisfaction: realistic expectations, shared interests, shared roles and responsibilities, shared power. It's necessary to continually adjust. In Scandinavia, 15% of women and 5% of men are married by the age of 24. At the same time, in Hungary, 70% of women and 33% of men are married by the age of 24. The average age of brides in the United States is 25, and the average age of bridegrooms is 27. 56% of the adult population in the United States are married and living with their spouses. Of people between 25 and 34, 34.7% have never been married. Among African Americans, 53.4% have never been married between 25 and 34. There may be a myriad of reasons for this trend, including high unemployment among black men, high level of independence among black women, penalties for having a non-contributing spouse in a household that is supported through any welfare payments. For decades, researchers have been reporting that married individuals are happier than unmarried individuals, but that no longer seems to be the case. Marriage seems to increase women's stress because of unequal homemaking and childcare responsibilities. In the beginning, the two seem to have different expectations about marriage. Women seek sharing of feelings and confidences. Men tend to express intimacy through sex, practical help, companionship, and doing things together. According to research, married couples have sex more frequently than single people who are not cohabiting. Most couples have more sex in the first year of marriage than they will in any other year during marriage. As people age, they tend to have sex less than they did when they were younger. Frequency of intercourse seems to be related to a couple's satisfaction with their marriage. 21% of married men and 11.5% of married women report extramarital affairs. Younger adults are more likely to feel that extramarital affairs are acceptable, though 75% of people feel that it is always wrong. Marriage should provide emotional needs of love and intimacy, the soulmate marriage. When the soulmate marriage ends in divorce, the divorce is called an expressive divorce if the marriage doesn't provide self-fulfillment. Belief in self-fulfillment and seeking everything in a marriage, the happily ever after scenario, leads to high divorce rates in the United States. Until the 1960s and 1970s, divorce laws in most states were very strict. With the liberalization of divorce laws, the number of divorces have increased markedly. The United States has one of the world's highest divorce rates, but divorce rates have plateaued since the 1980s. Almost 10% of the population in the United States are currently divorced. Divorces usually occur within the first 10 years of marriage. Causes of divorce include age of marriage younger than 25, divorced parents, socioeconomic status, conflict and stress over finances, partner behavior, drinking or drug use, or infidelity, adjustments after divorce hardest in the first 1 to 2 years. Several developments underlie the increase in divorce. Women who are more financially independent of their husbands may be less likely to stay in bad marriages. Fewer marriages are staying together for the sake of the children. The younger a person marries, the more likely the marriage will end in divorce. Teenage marriages have the highest divorce rate. And of course, I was married as a teenager and I got a divorce not that much in about 5 years, after about 5 years. And 2 kids. And I got to keep the kids. Education is also a factor. Women who drop out of high school or college are more likely to drop out of a marriage as well. The following factors seem to predict a higher divorce rate: premarital cohabitation, young age of marriage, bearing a child before marriage, having no children, stepchildren in the home, divorce of an individual's own parents, being African American. 70% of all African American couples divorce compared to 47% of white couples. Most women are worse off financially after divorce. Alimony is awarded in divorce cases in only 15% of the cases. Alimony is usually awarded for 2 to 5 years. Most states allow one spouse to obtain a divorce without the other spouse's consent. Usually, the woman is awarded custody of the children, and child support, when awarded, is often inadequate. 40% of divorcing women have their incomes cut by as much as 50%. Meanwhile, men's standard of living tends to rise because he is allocating a smaller portion of his income to support of his family. More than half the poor families in the United States are headed by single mothers. 80% of these women were once married. No matter how bad a marriage is, divorce is usually accompanied by feelings of failure, blame, hostility, self-recrimination. This form of stress may result in poor health or even death. The social stigma to a divorce affects common social activities, unlike the social support a widow tends to receive. The individual who initiates the divorce may feel relief, sadness, guilt, or apprehension, anger, which is better than the victim, who in addition may feel rejection, loss of control, powerlessness. The worst case scenario for either party is to still remain emotionally connected to the former spouse. Those who do not find a new lover or spouse will experience more emotional distress. For either sex, an active social life helps cut the emotional ties to the ex-spouse. Women of any age are more affected by divorce than men, but especially older women. Divorce, okay, there you go. 75% of divorced women will remarry. Men are even more likely to remarry than women. A woman is more likely to remarry if her first marriage was brief, she was young when it ended, she has no children, she is non-Hispanic white, she has a high school education, if she lives in the West. So there you go, Arizona people, Arizona, New Mexico people. Remarriages tend to be less stable than first marriages. Why marriages work: a sense of commitment, enjoyable relationship, intimacy balanced with autonomy, good communication, similar perceptions of the relationship, religious orientation, quick conflict resolution, showing anger is good, pouting shows an unwillingness to communicate. Compared to married young adults, it was thought being single led to increased mental health problems, physical health problems, substance abuse. Thorough analysis has shown all these negative effects were overblown. In fact, the least happy people seem to be the people in an unhappy marriage, even compared to people who were separated, divorced, or widowed. Ethnic variations exist in singlehood. African Americans have higher rates of cohabitation than other groups. By age 40, 41% have never married. In Asian countries, this is urban areas, 1/3 of women 30 to 34 are single. In Japan, single young adults are the happiest group. 1/3 of Japanese women between 30 and 34 and 20% of women between 40 and 44 have never married. Nearly all of unmarried adults in Japan continue to live at home even into their 40s. And strangely, most of these people are virgins, as odd as that may seem in the United States. There are similarities between homosexual and heterosexual partnerships. Both seek long-term relationships based on love, affection, and mutual respect. Both seek out similar partners. They have similar areas of conflict: money, sex, and household tasks. Differences include married couples have open relationships and tolerate sexual episodes more than lesbian or heterosexual couples. Higher sexual activity among gay couples. Lesbian couples have the lowest frequency of sexual activity. Many differences are fading as acceptance increases. Gay marriage is now legal in the United States, Belgium, Canada, the Netherlands, Spain, and Britain, New Zealand, Norway, Switzerland, Sweden, France, Germany, and Denmark. Sexual peak occurs during young adulthood, so it's socially acceptable. There is an implied pressure to have children. Western countries report sexual activity is less about children and more for intimacy. Men report more sexually motivated behaviors than women: masturbation, stimulation, and sexual thoughts. In traditional countries, becoming a parent is extremely important. Fertility is the goal of a woman, and men enjoy greater status. Women unable to give birth are objects of pity and scorn in most traditional countries. In developed countries, parenting is a choice and may not be extremely important. Parents are more likely to be on their own, although there are ethnic group differences. Views in becoming a parent: advantages and disadvantages. We won't go over those. In traditional cultures, gender roles are well defined, and parenting fits the roles. Female roles include run the household, care for children, tend the crops, or make items that can be sold. Male roles include provide economically for his family. In developing countries, gender roles are less defined, but women are more likely to have household and child care duties. Across the Western world, about 90% of single parents are single mothers. Single motherhood is higher now than 50 years ago. Rates of single parenthood in the United States runs around 40%. In the United States, there are ethnic and educational differences. Rates among African Americans runs around 70%. Rates among white females runs around 40%. Single parent households in the United States, New Mexico, has one of the highest rates. South Carolina, Mississippi, and Louisiana are the other really high ones. Arizona is in the second category. There we go. Many single mothers cohabitate with a father. They may receive assistance from other family members. In some cases, gay and lesbian couples who adopt are considered single parents. True single mothers may have lower income and increased stress. The more support the single mother gets from her own parents and other relatives and friends, the less stress she suffers. Percentage of single parent households in the United States by income and race and ethnicity. Developing occupational goals can occur through 5 stages. This is according to Super in 1967. Crystallization, the initial stage, usually occurs during adolescence. It considers matching talents with interests beyond fantasizing and begin to seek information about the job. Specification, choices become more focused. They pursue the education and the training to obtain their goal. Implementation, completing education that began in previous stage. The individual must reconcile desires with the job market. Stabilization, establish their career, and consolidation, gain expertise and experience in their work. Choice of occupation is influenced by personality. John Holland describes 6 personality characteristics. Holland tries to match personality types with occupation. And there they are: realistic, intellectual, social, conventional, enterprising, and artistic. Gender impacts occupational choices. Women are overrepresented in the service sector. Women's jobs tend to be low paying and low status. Women are underrepresented in STEM fields. Gender socialization and balancing work and family roles play a part. Women are more likely to have to work and have time away to care for family than men. Sociologists refer to women doing more work at home after working a full-time job as a second shift. Civic involvement goes up as young adults have children and become concerned. That may also be impacted by business networking. The individual may join a civic organization to enhance business contacts. Television plays a role in leisure activities in young adulthood. There is a negative correlation between television watching and community involvement. Since television viewing is not demanding, it is attractive to engage in. And that is the end of the lecture. So I will talk to you again next week.